Hey out there, Roadrunners. Welcome to Game Week and welcome to episode 186 of the Alamodome Podcast. This is your host, Jared Calmus, joined by my co-host, Adrian Bermudez. Man, this intro feels really good to record, dude. Let's go.
Let's go. I love that. What is good? It is Game Week. That is right. This Saturday, we're going to be at the Alamodome, baby. We'll be inside of it.
What's your heat check on a personal level, for the actual process of getting there, tailgating, going to the game, making some noise, watching the game, all that good stuff? Like, are you kind of like, it still feels early kind of mode, or you roaring ready to hit the asphalt?
Yeah, I could get in the car right now and drive to San Antonio.
That's what I'm talking about, man. That's what I'm talking about.
After Twitter today, I'm ready to go to San Antonio right now. It was like Twitter has been asleep since January.
I know, dude.
Totally dead quiet. Not a peep from Twitter for the last 7 months. And then, dude, today, Monday of game week, explosion. Absolute explosion. It's like people that haven't opened up that app since December all opened it back up today, and everyone was retweeting, replying, quote tweeting, liking. I mean, it was just electric, and I felt all the juice. From Twitter.
I know. I'm going to be honest with you and the listeners. I've been feeling a little bit dejected lately because I feel like we've been pouring in the work, man. I feel like we've been busting it, and then like we'll do like a great article or podcast, and it gets like 2 retweets. I'm like, what is this, dude? Like, this is all season engagement, man. What's going on here? And I was freaking out. I was like, is this something we're doing wrong? I don't know. Then I started looking at other UTSA content creators, and they weren't getting a whole lot of engagement either. So I think the fan base has just been in a bit of a slumper. But I have seen an awakening. I was sitting on the couch last night. I was finishing the Manti Te'o documentary.
Oh, yeah, that's okay.
Highly recommend. I think it's really, really good.
All of those Untold are good. All of those.
I didn't realize the other ones are out. Okay, cool. Yeah, I'm looking forward to the Donahue one. Anyways, so it's like 11:30 at night, dude, and my phone is ching, 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 ching. And it's like late at night, and our Twitter is just blowing up, dude. Going wild.
Those midnight notifications,
babe. I guess it's game week. I don't know.
That's right. The people are ready, dude. The people are ready. I think everyone knew it. Everyone had it on their calendar. And Sunday was the last day of rest. And then Monday, it was like, all right, baby, let's go. UTSA football is back. Roadrunner Nation is back. Man, yeah, you can feel the energy. You can definitely feel the buzz, no doubt.
Well, hopefully that starts to translate over into the ticket sales.
Are those looking a little suspect so far? Because I've heard some murmurings. I haven't looked at the chart myself, but I heard it's wishy-washy right now.
Yeah, but I would say wishy-washy is probably fair. I mean, like right now, like as someone who spends way too much time on the Ticketmaster website looking at UTSA ticket sales, I've spent too many hours of my precious life on this stupid seating map. But I mean, it's definitely going to be a good crowd, right? No doubt. I think maybe expectations might have been a little off for this, how excited the casual fan was going to be for this game. I mean, I was expecting like a strong 40K for this. I'm not sure we're gonna hit 40K now. I think it'll be like 35 for sure, and it's gonna be a great crowd. I don't want to say like, oh, I'm gonna be disappointed with this, or this is not gonna be great. It's gonna be an awesome environment. I think Houston's gonna travel well, but I think that a lot of people were expecting to see, kind of the fringe of the fan base like really come out for this game. So I don't know, like, Labor Day weekend, people made travel plans, they're gonna be out of town. I don't know what it is. For sure. The ticket sales, at least on Ticketmaster, have been a little bit slower than I expected. Like if you compare to like the championship game last year or the UAB game, I mean, the lower bowl was like sold out by Tuesday, and that's definitely not going to happen for this game. Now, that's not to say there might not be a huge walk-up crowd. Like we've seen that happen many, many times for UTSA, where the attendance is like 7 to 8K more than what like the Ticketmaster map showed it was going to be. I think there's a really good chance that happens again this week. I have a theory that people are going on Ticketmaster and they're seeing how expensive it is, and they're like, no, I'm just gonna wait and maybe buy tickets at the gate, because I mean, to get in the door is like $40 to $50 a ticket right now. It definitely jacked the prices up.
It's overpriced is what it is right now. Ticket, I mean, in certain sections they're pretty beefy. I mean, you should be able to walk into the Alamodome for $25 for a UTSA game, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, that's a fair take. It's a fair take. Yeah.
Not for the most supreme seats, but you should be able to walk into a UTSA football game, non-bowl, non-conference championship for $25. And anything above that, I think is crazy for a minimum for UTSA.
Yeah,
football.
no, that's a great point. Yeah, and there's been a lot of comparisons floated around to the UTEP UNT game that happened in week 0, where UTEP pretty much sold out the Sun Bowl. That they had like 45K. Yeah. I mean, and UTEP's athletic department did an amazing job marketing that game. I mean, I don't live anywhere near El Paso, and I was seeing ads on my timeline all the time. They spent a pretty penny marketing that game, right? So, kudos to them. It seemed to have paid off for them. But they were like really, it seemed advertising a lot of like cheap tickets, right, to try to get a really high number. And we haven't really seen UTSA employ those same tactics that I've seen. I have personally not seen a whole lot of like, the typical like buy a Pizza Hut pizza, get free tickets kind of deal. Like we've seen in the past.
Right.
That very well could be intentional. They're like, this is a premium opponent. We need to pay this 10-year Jeff Traylor contract off. We need to finish the cover race. Like, I totally get it. You got to maximize revenue. But I don't know. I mean, it'd be cool to see like, maybe Wednesday, like, okay, now's the final stretch. Like, let's fill up the dome, buy a ticket, get a ticket free in the third level or something like that.
Yeah, I think there could have been a little bit more commercialization regarding Houston versus UTSA, this marquee matchup of G5 Titans really hashing out. I mean, you talk about UTEP UNT really selling that individual game. And so I haven't seen a whole lot advertising for the individual specific matchup. There's a whole lot of UTSA football, get your tickets, UTSA football, but actually getting people hyped up for this specific matchup, I haven't actually seen happen. And so sure, maybe that has something to do with it. Also, I think maybe, San Antonio fan isn't totally tuned in to the rest of the world of college football. Maybe they don't realize how big of an opponent U of H is. But I mean, you think, because this is the first game of the season, it's at home, and then UTSA doesn't come back to the Alamodome for 3 more weeks. We have a 2-game road trip, and whenever you come back, you're playing Texas Southern. No one's going to go to the freaking TSU game, and so this is the only time that you could really fill up the Alamodome for the rest of the month, for the whole entire month of September. And so I think there could have been a little bit better of a commercialization towards this matchup. And I think maybe you would have get a little bit more hype about it if you could talk about the caliber of U of H, the caliber of UTSA, and how important, how big of a clash this is going to be. But we didn't quite see that. So I'll say that's a little bit of it. I also think it's just San Antonio UTSA fan maybe not being all the way up to speed with the landscape and how big of an this is. And then the ticket prices, man, I think it's a culmination of all those things. But I'll also be honest, my expectation for this game was always about 35,000.
Okay. That's not wrong, right? No matter what crowd shows up, like whether it's what's sold on Ticketmaster right now or like best case scenario, a huge walk-up crowd, it's still going to be like a top 8 crowd in UTSA football history. That's nothing to scoff against a G5 opponent, right? I know Houston's moving in the Big 12 and all that, but I mean, I think if we're being realistic, it's already a success, right? It's just like we've gotten so spoiled as UTSA fans with this crazy runaway success we've been having in all facets.
And you shouldn't, you shouldn't compare us to UTEP in the Sun Bowl, where you have generations and generations of Miners fans that, quite frankly, just don't exist. There's those generations of fandom don't exist for UTSA. It's easier for the Miners to get 45,000 people than it is for UTSA. It really is. And El Paso probably has a larger concentration of their population that is UTEP alumni than San Antonio does UTSA. And so I don't think we should be making our comparison to that. I think we should have a barometer of 35,000, and anything above that is fantastic for an Alamodome crowd, especially considering what it's been for the last 5 years.
Yeah, and I think another point, I'll make 2 more points before we move on. But point A, I don't, when I think of a casual San Antonio football fan that has no attachment to UTSA, I always think of a guy that's, he's got 2-3 kids, like he did a couple of years at community college. He listens to, Jason Minix and, all the
Rudy
radio
J.
guys.
Yep.
Right. He coaches like a youth football team or whatever. Yeah. Shout out Rudy J. But he's not going and reading Rivals. He's not going and reading, IRS. He's not listening to us, right?
He's not on the Twitter corner of the UTSA Twitter sphere. Yeah.
I don't think that guy knows that Houston is ranked coming into this game. I don't think he knows that like they beat Auburn in their last game in the Birmingham Bowl. I don't think they know that they've got like several NFL draft prospects, on their roster. So I think the media has done a really good job of covering this upcoming season, covering this game. But I don't think the message of like the weight of the matchup has really gotten through to the public at large. Yes. I think that's probably also true for parts of the UTSA fan base as well. Like people ask us so much more about the UT game than the Houston game. It's like the Houston game, it's a better game, dude. We get them at home,
Yeah.
So yeah. I think there's some disconnect there. I don't know if like Houston's brand is like really caught on locally with like where it should be as far as like quality of their football program.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's absolutely what it is. Absolutely what it is. But
I forgot the other point I was going to make. I don't know.
That's okay. But yeah, look.
Sorry. It came back to me real quick. Also, dude, getting 35K as a G5 program is really good. Like there are very few programs that are going to be able to pull those numbers, right? And you're seeing a lot of UTSA fans like scoff at it, like, "Oh man, this is some huge disappointment." It's like, no, like we're still doing exceptionally well compared to like the rest of the G5. Like we're always gonna be aspirational, and we want to hit those bigger numbers and blow everyone else out of the water, show the trajectory and all that. But that doesn't mean that like when we're still just better than everyone else that we're not doing a good job. Let's keep it real.
Keeping it real. Do you think if this week 1 UTSA matchup is at TDECU Stadium in Houston, do they pull 35,000 to TDECU to watch UTSA?
They don't pull 30K.
No,
dude.
They pull 25 max to watch UTSA play. No chance.
Yeah. And I think the hardcore fans think like Houston's going to bring 10,000 fans. No, buddy, no. If there were 5,000, that'd be awesome. Like I'd be impressed. But yeah, I don't think that people realize what Houston's attendance is like. Like, not to say they get bad crowds, but you can't compare it to, an A&M or TCU, something like that.
Exactly that. And so, UTSA fan, don't bitch about attendance this week. It's going to be great attendance. It's going to be super loud in the Alamodome. We got bigger fish to fry, man.
Yeah. I agree. It's all going to work out. It's all be good. Yeah, I think the final number is going to be higher than people are thinking right now. So we'll see what plays out. So we're going to talk about the depth chart a little bit, man. We got super lucky that both the Houston and the Roadrunner depth chart both dropped Monday. We typically get them Tuesday, Wednesday. So here I was sweating it out. Man, I'm going to miss out opportunity to speak on the 2 deep. But, we got lucky in that sense. Before we do that, I want to give a big shout out to all of our Patreon subscribers. Man, if you guys haven't signed up for Patreon yet, like this is the week to do it. We've got a full season preview section of the website. You can go through and read, I don't know, like 15, 20 articles and podcasts about the season preview. So wow, bang for your buck right off the bat. And we had our merch shipments go out this week. I always say it's a huge pain to pack all that stuff and pay for shipping and get it out to everyone, but it's always worth it to see the reaction from the subscribers when they get their packages in the mail. So thanks to all you guys that posted on social media. We got some awesome lapel pins for everyone that's at the booster tier and above. And then at the big money donor tier, we got some custom Columbia fishing shirts made. So man, those came out awesome. Thank you to Robin at Tailgate Chic for helping us put that together and getting it turned around really quickly as well. So yeah, sign up for Patreon. You'll join our big money donors, Ben Tovar, Rick Cortez of Rowdy Road Grillers, the Bunch family, Zach Espedicueta on the San Antonio Podcast Network, as well as our board of trustees members, Digitique, John Otwell, Lino Perez of Los Dos Rowdy's Tailgating, Gary and Ruben representing the UTSA Bird Gang Tailgate, and last but certainly not least, Ray Redding and Meet Me Apparel, who's got some sick Frank Harris gear available to purchase on the website right now.
Yes. Very nice. All right, man.
Well, let's get into this 2 deep, dude. This is the day that I wait for every year. That 5. And you got to thank Kyle Stevens, as sports information director. He sends it directly to the media now, whereas before we just got refreshing the website.
Yeah. But I do think that they tweet it before they send the email, so they
Yeah,
always
it's
get like
gangbang.
first
It's
dibs on the
gangbang.
tweet. Yeah, for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah.
It came out. Everyone was itching for it, scratching for it. We finally got it, man. We finally got it. So, you want to start offense? You want to start defense? You want to start with just biggest surprises?
Yeah, those are biggest surprises. I think it's a good way to start it.
I think so too.
Man, I think mine. Okay, like left tackle, we kind of knew that that's ongoing position battle, right? And that one's going down to the wire. We had kind of gotten tipped off, in some media interviews that Finley Tadafu was like in the running to start at left tackle, JUCO transfer sophomore, really young guy. I think it's like 18, 19-year-old sophomore.
Yeah.
So I wasn't surprised to see him at the top of the depth chart. But there's two other guys that have like or starter indications on the depth chart. Other one is totally expected, Demetrius Allen. He was the starter heading into the spring, kind of like heading into fall, like that day one starter fall camp. Him and Finley have seems to really been battling it out. I do think that Finley is going to get the first snap on Saturday, but maybe the biggest surprise to me, and I'm looking at the depth chart now, like, is this real? Ben Rios, true freshman from Central Catholic, also listed as an or starter at left tackle as a true freshman.
Yeah, that's not one we saw coming at all.
No. And, I like Ben's film, coming out of Central Catholic. He's got a great frame.
Yeah.
I think I said previously, I think he could play at like 330 and carry that weight really well at 6'6". Didn't expect him in the 2 deep this early at all.
Not going into
really
Houston.
Cool.
Yeah.
No, yeah. And not even to be on the depth chart, but to be listed as an or to potentially start is a huge endorsement. Even if he's not actually going to get playing time and like they're going to try to redshirt him and all that, that's still a huge ranking endorsement of not only his potential, but his current capability as well. Because they're not going to put him on the depth chart if they don't think he could play like this week. So that was a huge surprise to me and really, really cool to see.
It is very, very good to see Ben Rios on there. But does that also mean that position is in not so good shape?
No, that's a fair question. That's a fair question for sure. I think what it does tell us for sure is that Payne Hebert, the Northwestern graduate transfer offensive tackle, must be hurt because he's not on the depth chart anywhere. And I find it hard to believe that if he was ready to go, a graduate transfer Big Ten player wouldn't be somewhere on the depth chart when you've got 4 freshmen in the 2 deep on the offensive line.
For sure.
I can't recall seeing him in any pictures or videos from fall camp at all. Damn. So I haven't heard anything about an injury, but I feel like that's a safe assumption that he must not be fully healthy, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think that's a safe assumption for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that one is a bit of a surprise, no doubt.
What about you? What surprised you the most?
It was interesting to see how linebackers filling out. We saw Pig Cage listed as a Sam.
Yeah, that surprised me. I thought he was like a free safety kind of strong safety kind of guy.
So did I. But I think I had heard like that he had been kind of moving around a little bit. But yeah, I still didn't think he would come out on the depth chart at that spot. And then we had Trey Moore, a freshman, get the nod over Jamori Robinson at the will linebacker, the weak side, which is crazy because we were pretty certain Jamori was good, and there's no or right there. I mean, that's
the thing to me.
There's no or on that will position. One of the few positions that doesn't have an or. Yeah.
I thought Trey was like a slight favorite to start. I thought Jamori was right neck and neck, but Trey was going to get the nod.
Okay,
but there's not even an or, right? It's just like straight up, like redshirt freshman Trey Moore starter. Boom, lock, done.
I think that speaks volumes to Trey's game.
Yeah.
No doubt.
And the thing with Trey that made me feel really good about his chances of not only landing on the 2 deep but potentially starting is the way that like the veteran players talk about him when asked about the linebacker position in interviews. Like, super young guy, just redshirted last year, and they just speak about him like he's been in the program forever. Right. Yeah. Like, to me, that says like he's got a ton of maturity. He's a hard worker, probably a future single digit guy. And it's always great to see a local San Antonio product, earn that kind of respect from the older guys right off the bat.
Right. For sure. Yeah. Yeah. That one was pretty impressive to see. I mean, I think it does speak volume to his game. And yeah, I mean, I guess Big Cage is just going to work wherever they put him, right? I mean, he seems like a guy that's just going to be versatile there as a defensive back. He's going to be menacing, like wherever you put him, right? And so,
man,
I guess maybe they
see ball, get ball. That's all it is, man. See ball,
yeah,
get ball.
And I think the staff saw that the linebacker group needed more help than the secondary did, right? And so maybe that's also what prompted the move too.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think I mentioned this in our interview with the Scott Holman podcast, which we'll talk about here in a second. I think we're going to see like a lot of different personnel packages on the defensive side of the ball. So I think like when Big Cage is listed as a linebacker, that means like he's going to see the field on those like pass defense, like you'll hear some defense called like a SWAT package, kind of like a third and long, maybe fourth and mid where like you're expecting them to pass. So I don't see Big Cage playing like a traditional linebacker role, but I think he's going to line up there and like, nickel/dime coverage, right? It's kind of like an extra coverage player that's happened to be playing at the linebacker spot.
Yeah.
Staying on the linebackers, though, another thing that really surprised me, Martavius French listed as the backup interior linebacker at the jack position. So whenever he signed with UTSA, I was like, oh, he's for sure an interior linebacker. Like I had never pictured him playing on the outside, but that's where he seemingly was playing for most of fall camp. Then the depth chart comes out, and he's back an inside linebacker. And I was like, I don't know, I feel like I've been in a spin cycle, it's like, what the heck?
Right. Yeah, that's an interesting one. Linebackers got a heck of a lot of names at it. Whenever we look at that Sam position, it seems like that's really the spot that hasn't quite figured itself out. And then also, I mean, you've got both the Taylor brothers there, and so you want them to get the action. But I guess it's the depth part of it that they haven't quite figured it out. How much do you love Joshua Cephas returning punts?
I like it a lot. Yeah. I think he's got good hands. I think he's makes good decisions with the ball in his hand. So I think he'll do well there. And I think he's faster and a little bit more dynamic than some of the guys UTSA's had at punt return, in the past like 5 years or so.
Right. I think so too. I think he's gonna do really well. That's kind of, it's one of those positions that really haven't had like a solid guy, a dependable guy that's always gonna not just catch the ball securely, but maybe get a couple extra yards for you, put you in a better spot, right? And yeah, I like Joshua Cephas' playmaking ability to do that there for sure.
So let's take Sheldon Sticks Jones out of the equation because recency bias and all that good stuff. When you think of a UTSA punt returner, what are some of the names that pop in your head, if any?
God, man, not a lot.
Right? Kenny Harrison's the only guy I really think of, right?
Kenny Harrison. Yeah. I want to say Winnigan, but he only did kickoffs.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, he didn't do punts. There's one more I think that we're missing.
Jabryce Taylor, maybe?
Jabryce Taylor, yeah. Kenny Harrison was pretty dependable. From what I remember, at least. Maybe he had a couple mishaps, but
only reason I bring that up is because like it's never really been an impact position
never
for UTSA.
Never.
Right? Like kind of timely they were playing Houston this week. Houston had Marcus Jones as kick returner, punt returner, and he was a big difference maker for them as a return specialist. I can't really call him a return specialist because he is an NFL cornerback now. But, it's a guy who can really change the game every time special teams is involved. UTSA hasn't really had that guy, especially the punt return position. So, hopefully Josh can, really add to what he's accomplished at the wide receiver position by returning punts. I think he's certainly capable of it.
Definitely so. Yeah, I think so too.
Then I guess like last surprise for me is the slot receiver position. Obviously, Cephas is listed as the starter, but there's two walk-ons behind him. It's Karja Gardner and Kyle Eves. And admittedly, I've been really high on Kyle Eves, like since he first got to campus as a true freshman. But he's just so small. It's hard to have predicted him to like break into the two deep. But here he is, man. I'm really interested to see if he plays or not. And I have been talking about this all offseason. I think it's another example of how this offense is going to be more of a pass-friendly, pass-happy offense when you got like these true slot receivers lining up in the slot, because there really is a different skill set than just taking your third best receiver and throwing them into the slot. So I think that not only is it cool that those guys are going to be there, and I think that they've both made good plays when I've seen them at, spring ball and stuff like that, but I think it's another indication of where Will Stein's going to take this offense under, his direction as offensive coordinator.
There's it's not really depth chart news, but something that Traylor had mentioned in his interviews and that probably hasn't been talked about enough. Hunter Duplessis was straight money for the Roadrunners last year. I mean, a huge reason why we won as many games as we did is because of Hunter Duplessis' foot and his unbelievable accuracy to hit not just every extra point, but every single freaking field goal that he needed to, whether it was a walk-off, game winner, or go ahead, or just something to give us a little bit of cushion. He was cold as ice. Mm-hmm. And Traylor said that Jared Sackett is replacing Hunter extremely well. He's kind of gone out of his way to commend it. And I, nothing against Jared Sackett, but whenever he was here in his previous tenure, he wasn't half the kicker that Hunter Duplessis was.
Whoa, buddy!
I won't say, maybe I shouldn't say not half, but he wasn't as reliable as Hunter Duplessis.
He was an All-American, dude.
He was.
You're tripping, bro. You're tripping. You're tripping on this one, man.
Okay. All right.
I saw it the other way. I thought Sackett was better than Duplessis. And
really?
Funny you bring it up. I feel like we made a bet on a podcast that Duplessis was an NFL kicker.
We did. I think we did. Yeah. No, he hasn't shown up there. But, oh, man, maybe my memory is just totally freaking wrong then. Because I recall Sackett being good, but not as consistent as Hunter Duplessis.
Man, I'm about to pull receipts on you, dude. I'm about to search
we have
Sackett from @Alamo_Adrian_. Boom. Pull
That's the only way.
Oh. No, dude. Jared Sackett was incredible at UTSA. He was an All-American. He was hitting from 50 yards consistently for UTSA. Okay. Now, Duplessis was great, right? But, Sackett had a different level of range that Duplessis just couldn't really bring to the table, right? Now, that's not to say I think Sackett's going to do a better job in his return to UTSA than what we saw from Duplessis over these past couple of years, because, he's maybe got a cold leg, if you will, right? He went to Arkansas, didn't really work out. He went to USF and got stuck behind an incredible place kicker there. So we'll have to see, mentally as he is locked in, coming back home to San Antonio after having kind of, some experiences at his last two stops. But I think UTSA is going to be in really good hands place kicking, especially relative to, average place kicker. If we're comparing him against Hunter, yeah, he might be a slight step back from Hunter from a consistency standpoint. But compared to most schools, I think UTSA is going to be really, really good shape there.
Okay. So more range, but not as consistent?
I'd have to pull the numbers to see what it looks like. I mean, Sackett was damn good at UTSA. Really, really damn good.
I mean, I never disliked him. I just recall Hunter being more consistent, more reliable. Yeah. Maybe I'm totally wrong. And so I apologize. No disrespect to Jared Sackett. I mean, we always said he was the next best Jared at UTSA. And so I still do believe in that. But Traylor has gone out of his way to say that Jared Sackett is kicking the ball unbelievably well, freaking awesome. And so that is very good to hear because, man, that place kicker is extremely important to UTSA's win-loss column. Really is.
Yep. Now, so your point about consistency, I feel like if you felt like Jared was less consistent than Duplessis, it's probably because he was attempting things that were outside of Hunter's range. Right? That would have been a punt or a conversion attempt. I don't know.
Also, the Wilson was all about going for the field goal any and every single time, right? Anytime and every time, right? He was like, no, take it out of the offense's hands. Let's kick the field goal. And Jeff Traylor certainly is trying to go for 7 every single time. So that might have to be, it could also be just attempts. The number of attempts could be way higher for Jared's time when he was at UTSA. Yeah, could be. I'll have to pull the stats in and see how they're looking officially. But I apologize,
man. To me or to other Jared? Both.
To both.
Oh, man. Man, it's rare for us to like really disagree on a podcast, and that was one on, buddy. I'm gonna stop you right there, dude.
We need more. We need more. We need more disagreements. What we don't have enough of.
Dude. I know. We need to like find a third co-host with some awful takes, just so we can disagree with them.
Oh yeah, there you go.
We need to plant some listener questions.
Damn. Oh my gosh. That's classic.
Yep. Well, good stuff. I don't know. Only other thing I could think of that's worth mentioning on the depth chart, maybe backup quarterback position seems to not be settled. Everyone thought Eddie Lee Marburger had it in the bag, but there's an or next to Cam Peters. To me, I see that more as Cam Peters getting a lot better, right?
Yeah.
He's had some really nice throws in some of the clips that we've seen on social media. He looked pretty good at the spring game, too. I was kind of blown away by his progression. I mean, to be frank, when he first got to UTSA, I never had any expectation he was going to play. Now, if he goes out Saturday and he has to play, I'm not feeling bad about it. I'm looking forward to it. So
there's a chance he could do it, huh?
I think so. Yeah, he's coming along. I mean, an incredibly stingy defense at Houston, right? But if they send him out there against Middle Tennessee or something like that, I think he'd do pretty well.
Mm-hmm. Definitely so. Yeah. And we might see those guys get to sort of duke it out for the backup spot in real time as we see those TSUs and those MTSUs. Absolutely.
Yeah, good point.
It could be fun.
Yeah. I don't know. Only other thing I can think of is shouting out DeAndre Marshall on the 2 deep as well as a true freshman. You got, Central Catholic boys on both sides of the offensive line, which is super cool. So, great sign that these guys made the depth chart this early in their career, and hopefully they keep developing. I mean, man, that's going to be huge if both of those guys hit at UTSA.
Were you surprised to see all 4 running back names listed?
Just a little bit. Just a little bit, yeah.
Not totally, yeah. We knew it was going to be a lot, yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be a committee for sure. I mean, there's going to be packages where they're going to want Edwards in because he's the bigger back. He kind of moved the pile a little bit. And there's going to be times where they're going to want Barnes in because he's kind of the more shifty guy, can catch out of the backfield, right? So I think it's more like recognizing their different roles on the offense is really the way that I see it. But I still see Brady and Smith as 1A, 1B kind of, dual head approach at running back there as the primary ball carriers.
Okay.
Well, cool. I think that pretty much about sums it up at the depth chart. So we're going to take a quick cumbia break. When we come back from the cumbia break, we're joined by 2 of my favorite podcasters in the land. That's Sam and Dustin from the Scott and Holman Podcast. They do an absolutely incredible job of covering the Houston Cougars, and we've been buddies with them forever. So it's always great, to have a game to preview together. Hopefully we'll have another one on the schedule at some point in the near-ish future. I don't think that there's anything scheduled for quite a while. But yeah, without further ado, we'll go ahead and take this cumbia break, and then we'll cut it over to our interview with Sam and Dustin. Be sure to check them out. Check out their podcast. Great content. I think both Adrian and I both listened to their offensive and defensive preview podcast that they had last week, and we're on their show this week as well, giving kind of our thoughts heading to this matchup, some things that concern us, what we're excited for, all the good stuff. So I hope you guys enjoy. And then lastly, just a reminder that we're going to have a Patreon summit on Wednesday. If you're unfamiliar with the summit, that is like our virtual happy hour that we have with our Patreon subscribers at the booster tier and above. So really informal, we just get together, pour up a drink, and we'll just start talking whatever we want to talk. We'll talk a little UTSA football. We'll have a little mailbag Q&A kind of deal. And who knows where the conversation will take us, but cool opportunity to meet some fellow Patreon subscribers. And we have a lot of repeat attendance, right? So when people check it out, they tend to come back. So I'm excited to see some new faces with our new subscribers, and I'm sure it'll be a great time. So be sure to join us. That's Wednesday, I think at 8 p.m. Central. And if you're a booster tier, you can go to Patreon, and you should have received the link in your email or on the Patreon site. So yeah, really look forward to that.
It's the best. It's the best. It's been a while since we had one.
I know. Yeah, it has.
And it's game week. It's the absolute best time to have one. And yeah, I think people are going to show up for happy hour this time. And we're going to have a really fun discussion. It's going to be good.
Yes, sir. All right. We'll stretch those hips out. Let's hit the cumbia break, and we'll be back with Sam and Dustin. All right, guys, we got Sam and Dustin here from the Scott and Holman Podcast, which if you guys haven't checked them out this week yet, what are you doing with your life? It's an incredible Houston Cougars podcast that I've been listening to forever. I've had the privilege of meeting Sam a couple of times. Great friend. And man, they do an awesome job covering not just football, but all sports. I mean, the women's soccer coverage I heard from you guys while listening to the podcast this week blew my mind, man. I'm trying to get on y'all's level every day. But thanks for joining us, guys. How are y'all doing this week?
Hey, doing great. Good to be talking to you guys, and excited to be talking about some Cougar football this actual Saturday. It's hard to believe we're actually going to be playing football on Saturday, but here we are. We finally made it.
Yeah, I can't decide if the offseason dragged or if it got here in a snap, and it almost got here. I feel like it got here in a snap. I feel like it wasn't too long that we were talking about the Birmingham Bowl those 8 months ago.
Yeah, well, obviously Houston's bowl season ended on a much more positive note than UTSA's did. So we'll see if the Roadrunners can, flip the plot a little bit and get things back on track. But first question I have for you guys is, man, I watched a lot of Houston Cougar football last year, and I was so impressed with Clayton Tune and Nathaniel Dell. What a great connection there. We've seen a lot of really good quarterback and receiver connections at Houston going back for decades now. But what makes Dell and Tune such a lethal combination on that offense?
Dell, I think it's his versatility. He can line up, in the slot. He can line up outside. He's just such a good route runner. He's just impossible to stay in front of, it seems. And just even when Houston's had, at times, I think the most, one of the more critical things you could say about the Houston offense the last year or two, even as Dell's been really, really good, is that the offense is kind of over reliant on him. And he's so good at what he does that even when you kind of feel like you knew the ball is coming for Tank Dell, like he just ends up with the ball anyway. And for Clayton's 2.5, it's just he's shown some really impressive, I think, pocket awareness and some toughness, some willingness to stay in the pocket and take hits. And so he knows, that if he can find Dell, if he's going to make it happen. And that's, I think, just been what has kind of made this unlikely as the JUCO transfer and the guy that, kind of started out as, oh man, this guy's really struggling trying to take over for DR King. This is guy who's not who we thought he was. Kind of an unlikely duo, I think, to really cement themselves as one of the great, Cougar receiver quarterback combinations of the 21st century. But I think with a really strong year this year, I think they would have to put themselves in that kind of upper echelon of the really impressive guys we've seen come through here.
And I won't digress too much, but Dell didn't come into U of H as this big time can't miss recruit. He was a junior college guy who had, I think, less than 3 other offers. He actually, I believe, had to go FCS his freshman year because FIU pulled his offer right before signing it. It's just like, man, FIU pulled your, kind of an auspicious start. Yet, we're talking about him now as one of the best, a handful might be a little strong, the best, couple handfuls of receivers in the country. And I would say Dustin took a lot of points there, but I would say the only thing that Tank Dell can't do is be 6'3" or 6'4". Like he's a good on speed, positional versatility, good pass catcher. He just does everything so well. And I think it certainly doesn't hurt that this is his 3rd season now and just has had so many reps from, games to practice to, just unofficial, off-season work together. You can't not get some kind of connection if you work with someone so long. And we're talking about, 2 guys I think have a lot of talent, have a lot going for them, but also years and years now of just repping this offense together. I think that's obviously quite helpful here.
I can't stop shaking my head thinking about FIU of all schools pulling a scholarship. Dude, that is wow. There's so many layers to that.
With the way that's gone the last couple of years. Yeah, probably one that Butch Davis's staff wants back.
I feel like you can kind of write a novel of how that spelled doom for Butch Davis and Miami, but
domino effect of it.
Yeah. I'll lob that one over to Eric Henry and Underdog Dynasty, see what he thinks of that as our resident FIU expert on the internet at large. Anyways,
how about
this is hard to get out of my head.
Again, I said I wouldn't cause a digression. Here I did. That's my fault, guys.
How about sticking in the backfield? When we look at the running back position, y'all lost y'all starting halfback Alton Mccaskill, who was pretty beastly, man. I mean, 16 touchdowns. I think he was the 10th highest scoring running back in FBS, almost 1,000-yard season. And I'd imagine, y'all had really big expectations for him coming into this season. So now y'all look at Tazon Henry, 5'7", transfer from Tech, I think it was. What does the production look like in the backfield for you guys? How's the ground game going to be this season without McCaskill?
Yeah, you can't spend it. Obviously, we'd prefer Alton Mccaskill to be here and healthy. That was the one disappointing thing I would say that's happened this offseason is Alton Mccaskill getting hurt in spring ball and pretty much being ruled out for the current season. There's no way I'm going to come on here and say, oh yeah, no, the running game is going to be better without Alton Mccaskill. No, I mean, like you said, he had about as good of a year as you could fairly expect any freshman not on one of the blue blood teams. He was really good. If anything, there was a couple of games where he left early injured. So would have been, I think, if he'd been fully healthy, an over 1,000-yard guy, which is pretty crazy for a freshman. I do like Tayson Henry. He did miss the entirety of the 2020 season. I don't know if anyone remembers this, but we used to make Division I transfers sit out between seasons, but it wasn't the worst thing. Actually, he had a lot of problems staying healthy at Texas Tech, and it was almost like a recovery year for him. But also, you could tell he spent a lot of last season getting back used to the speed of football, getting used to being in a new offense, even as he spent a season there. And he'll never be Alton Mccaskill. I don't think we're going to see him rush for 1,000 yards and be a bell cow kind of running back, but somebody who came in actually right about the same time, completely coincidentally, as Alton Mccaskill getting hurt was Brandon Campbell, a USC transfer, was a 4-star recruit, played a couple different high schools, I think, but I think finished up at Foster out in Fort Bend, was a real good player, got on the field a little bit at USC last year, which don't put a whole ton of stock in, but any freshman getting on the field for any team above the absolute dregs of Division I feel like is at least somewhat notable. So I think that'll be an interesting combo, and a guy who has not actually gotten on the field either of his first 2 years in the program, but that we constantly heard about in the offseason was Stacy Sneed, a running back who the staff thinks might actually be the most dynamic all-purpose guy of this group out of Henry, Campbell, and Sneed. So I think kind of like we talked about with y'all on our podcast and how UTSA is kind of transitioning from, Sincere McCormick being the bell cow of this offense to, kind of a by committee approach. I think you're going to see some of that here, though obviously any offense that goes from having Alton Mccaskill to not having Alton Mccaskill isn't going to be better in the run game for it.
Yeah, I think it is really interesting to see how well Henry takes on what will likely be a larger role, even if it is kind of a running back by a committee situation this year. And he's someone who kind of is an interesting parallel to Kashawn Carter, another Texas Tech transfer at receiver who you really, towards the end of last season, saw get more and more comfortable with the offense. And I think we've kind of seen that with Henry over the course of the year. He got more and more comfortable and, able to assert himself. And then the Campbell transfer, like Sam mentioned, very interesting. But, I think that the interesting question for me, in addition to who kind of makes up the running back committee, is also, does Dana Holgorsen have the fortitude all season long to stick with using the running backs as much as he has? Because since he's been at Houston, even his late years in West Virginia, was running it 50% of the time, pretty close to 50-50. Even said in his media availability today, we want to continue to be a run-first team. And really establish the run and pass off of that. But man, when you've got Clayton Tood, you got Tank Dell, you got a lot of really tantalizing receivers in the folds. Dana Holgorsen made what was very obviously a joke about if the running backs, a few weeks ago, if the running backs aren't playing up to snuff, he's just going to go 5 wide and go back to the old days. But that's very much not what he wants to do. But he might be tested by a roster that just feels like it might have more talent in the passing game than maybe it has in the running back group. And that's not, again, it's not a major knock on anyone in the running back group. I think Henry's a good player. I'm really excited about Campbell and what he could accomplish in his U of H career. But, going up against, Clayton Toon, Tank Dell et al., that's a high bar to clear and might, force the running backs to be utilized a little bit less.
Well, and of course, being a San Antonio-based podcast, we've got to shout out the absolute GOAT coaching the running backs at Houston, and that's Mike Jinks, San Antonio legend. So I've got total faith in Mike Jinks to get the job done. I mean, the guy's coached so many amazing running backs throughout his coaching career. I'm sure he'll find, the right option and put them to the best of use. But, when I was watching Houston last year, one guy that really stood out to me was left tackle Patrick Paul. That guy is, wow, talk about a book and tackle. What's he like, 6'7", 330 or something like that? I think he's only a sophomore. Can you talk a little bit about Patrick Paul, how he got to U of H and what do you think his ceiling is?
Yeah, he's been really an exciting player since he got here. I think right at the end of his freshman year, they went ahead and played him for 3 games, just kind of like figuring, okay, because I think the injury scenario was that bad that it was just kind of like, okay, let's, we've got to throw someone out there. Let's go ahead and get him some reps and keep him under the redshirt limit. But yeah, it's now the point where he's now a fourth year sophomore or something like that, and a guy that just played a ton at the left tackle position. Obviously, not just on the offensive line, but at a hugely premium position at left tackle there. And yeah, just certainly has the body that makes you feel like he could be a Sunday guy. And he's just been really, really impressive. And just obviously he's had some growing pains when he went out there as a true freshman. Even in his redshirt freshman season, it was okay. You still kind of, you saw all the potential in the world in him, but he still kind of looked like a freshman, had some of those, youngster inconsistencies, and has really ironed that out and become, I think by this point, someone I have total faith in. He's not out there as just a project kind of guy. He's, I think, legitimately going to be an all conference type of player. And we said it when we were doing our offense preview, we were previewing the offensive line. There are no seniors on the roster at offensive line at U of H this year. If any player doesn't return next year on the offensive line, it might be because Patrick Paul is playing on Sundays.
I always tell people this story about Patrick Paul. His first game, I think Dustin kind of alluded to it, I believe Memphis game in the 2019 season. It took me until his third or fourth play on the field to realize that actually at left tackle, it wasn't Josh Jones, a guy who ended up getting drafted, I think, in that following spring's draft by the fourth round of Cardinals. It took me several plays back. Wait a minute, that's not Josh Jones out there, which is quite a statement to, for a true freshman to have that kind of build that you don't immediately say, oh, wait, that's not our, multi-time all conference bookend tackle. He just has always had the size. He's always had that, kind of Sunday frame. And I think last year you finally started to see something close to the level of production where you think, okay, he's got the size, but he actually might have the skill to be a Sunday player. I think he still has some room to grow, I think, in the run blocking, but you can add that with bulk. I think you can't, if a guy is a bad pass blocker, that feels a little bit more terminal than, okay, like this guy just needs another year or two in the weight room, another year or two going up against college defensive linemen. Whereas pass blocking seems like more of a technical thing. And I would say Patrick Paul most impressed me last year by being an above average pass blocker in what was, even though he got some action in the 2019 and 2020 seasons, last year was his first full season as a starter. I think a very impressive first season for us, for certainly.
Mm-hmm. So I was listening to y'all's defensive preview with Pod Slamma Jamma, and man, I think I would have to use more than my fingers and my toes to count the number of times y'all said Sack Avenue, Sack Avenue, Sack Avenue. I kept hearing it, and I was like, man, I was getting scared as hell just listening to how many guys you said Sack Avenue. It's a very menacing title. Can you tell us a little bit about Sack Avenue and what the UTSA offensive line needs to prepare for on Saturday?
It was kind of a creation of the guy, I would say it was Dana Holgerson's probably second best hire since he's gotten here, Brian Early, defensive line coach, which again, still I'm actually pinching myself that he is still on the staff because this guy was a really good developer, defensive lineman at Arkansas State, and just has picked up exactly where he left off there. Here, multiple high draft picks. Peyton Turner was a first rounder a couple years ago. Logan Hall was the first pick of the second round this past year. Neither guy came to this program as a heralded recruit. And I would say a few guys from this year's group, Derek Parrish and D'Anthony Jones, are going to be, I would say, a primary pass rusher is probably the guy. And we talked about left tackle and the question mark that's there for UTSA. I would say Derek Parrish and D'Anthony Jones, the guys you're going to see most often lining up against that left tackle, most often prompting that matchup. And both, I would say very differently, both guys are really intriguing pass rushers. Derek Parrish is, I don't know if he's the physical specimen that D'Anthony Jones is, but he is just absolutely not going to take a millisecond off there. He is going to play until probably a few breaths after the whistle. He's going to really make the left tackle work. And D'Anthony Jones, I think, is really exciting because he's this freak athlete and was doing it last year at 295 pounds. He dropped 30 pounds in the offseason. I think if you want to see what D'Anthony Jones is really about, if it's out there, I don't think I could find it. Find the tape of him working against the guy who ended up being the Cowboys left tackle. I can't remember his first name now, but Smith of Tulsa just absolutely gave him fits. It was living inches from Davis Brin just about every snap he was on the field. And I think the guy we're most intrigued about in terms of the pass rushers, I'll let Dustin handle the interior guys, because the defensive linemen who are going to see action in San Antonio in the red and white are many and numerous. But Nelson Caesar, I think, is the guy we're really intrigued to see what kind of step he takes from last year to this year. He was one of, I think he might have actually been the top high school recruit that the Applewhite staff got committed here. The Holgerson staff gets here in the spring of 2019, is able to hold on to him, which I think was one of our first signs that, okay, the staff might be legit, in addition to bringing in guys like Patrick Paul and Cameron Johnson late in that 2019 cycle. And just seeing, because everything we've heard this offseason is that Nelson Caesar is going to be the guy taking the big step forward. You're going to really like what you see from Nelson Caesar, who's had his moments, but has been very much a part-time player to this point. I think if you have Parrish and Jones on one side and a Nelson Caesar is finally playing up to that recruiting potential on the other side, I think this is a very, very fearsome pass rush. And there's probably 2 or 3 other guys that are going to see a fair amount of snaps rushing the passer that, don't have the time to talk about tonight, but is a very, very deep group of edge rushers. And I think I'll pass it off to my co-host to elaborate on. Also a ton of good experience in the interior as well.
Yeah, I think what's been just so remarkable about Brian Early, who Sam and I are both just huge fans of, is not only developing those NFL guys, but what you've just seen in terms of what he's brought in, just in terms of talent on the defensive line and just the depth of guys that they can run, 10 guys deep on the defensive line with players that you all want to get out there and want to actually see have snaps. And Sam mentioned at defensive end, same thing at defensive tackle, that there's just a ton of guys there. We said there are guys that aren't on the 2 deep at both defensive end and defensive tackle that 2 or 3 years ago would have been starters easily. And just a defensive tackle, I think you have to be really, really excited about. I'll start with Chidozie Nwako, a now third-year sophomore, was a pretty impressive recruit out of the Houston area, and basically has been at the interior defensive line, has played, I think, every game that he's been eligible for the last 2 seasons since he's been here, and is just someone that not only, does he not look out of place on the interior defensive line, he has at times required, multiple guys to block him to keep him out of the backfield, not just someone who's just eating space, but someone who is actually, you're going to have to plan for, him getting pressure on the quarterback. And another guy that I think fits that bill on the interior of the defensive line is Latrell Bankston, a guy that I've got the pleasure of watching over the last 2 years as a secondary Iowa State fan. He started out with the Cyclones, was a real havoc creator for them his first year after being a super highly touted JUCO recruit. Came to Houston, and I think was dinged up at times last year, but when healthy was a real menace, and now back as a fifth-year super senior. So really excited about what those guys can do as a couple of 1-2 guys in the middle of the line. But like I said, not only are they going to make Houston, I think, a really good defensive run team, but they are guys that you're going to have to account for in the pass rush as well.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe the Cougars had 2 cornerbacks selected in the NFL draft this past season. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Yeah. So what's the kind of like the gut check heading into the season at the cornerback position? Do you feel like it's kind of a reload deal or a little bit of cause for concern?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's no way to sugarcoat it and pretend like Houston's not going to be less good at the cornerback position than they were a year ago, losing a couple of NFL draft picks in Marcus Jones and Demarion Williams. And out of Marcus, as on account of Marcus Jones not being around, significantly worse probably in the kick return game than they were a year ago too.
That's gonna be hard to top.
All-time talent at that. But sticking with the secondary for now and the cornerback position, I think that there are 3 guys coming back who, Houston has been, like a lot of teams running a nickel-based defense at this point. You've got 3 guys coming back who started 3 or more games, either supplanting what the other guys were playing at the nickel last year. And then you brought in a trio of JUCO cornerbacks who are all pretty highly touted, including Moses Alexander, one of the top. I think he was like the number 2 JUCO cornerback in the country. Ended up not being on the 2 deep even. So there was a ton of guys coming back behind the 2 kind of stars. Alex Hogan, third Texas Tech transfer. We'll shout out on the podcast. Cornerback Alex Hogan was, I thought, pretty good when you saw the field. Art Green, another guy, former highly touted JUCO transfer, who has, I think, made the most of the reps that he's gotten. It's just gonna be a lot of guys stepping into bigger roles than what they had before, and that's, I think I wouldn't say I'm worried to the point of, I think Houston's just gonna, have major issues at that position the way they did, the first couple of years under Dana Holgerson when he inherited a staff of or a roster of really no Division I caliber cornerbacks. I don't think Houston is desperate at that position, but yeah, like I said, similarly, I'm also not going to pretend like they are going to be as strong there as they were last year.
Yeah, obviously having a great pass rush is, going to be a bit of a lifeline for them. So it's great. I'm curious, what's the story with all the Texas Tech transfers? Was it just, coaching change and they were all from Houston, or was there more to the story than that?
I think there's always more than just like a 1-sentence description of it, but I would say coaching change, Houston area guys. I mean, because all 3 of them are Houston area. Henry went to Lamar and HISD. Sean Carter is from the Woodlands, and Alex Hogan, I want to say, he was a teammate of Lamar, or teammate of Henry's at Lamar High. So I think just getting local bounce back guys to some degree, and definitely guys who left that program around the the change from Kingsbury to Matt Wells. I think that played a part as well.
So whenever y'all look at Saturday's matchup, what are the keys for a Cougar victory against UTSA, or what do y'all need to watch out for against UTSA? What do y'all cautious of?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is kind of one of the last things we talked about. And as much as I said, I feel pretty good about the Houston cornerback group. They're facing a very veteran quarterback in Frank Harris, someone that can really slang the ball around, and a wide receiver group that's got a lot of studs coming back. So that is a passing attack that is going to, I think, really test Houston right out of the gates and really find out how good all those other corners are stepping into bigger roles. And we had you guys on our pod a minute ago, and it's talked about the winning strategy for UTSA being getting into a slugfest, and that's kind of what worries me, is that UTSA with a pretty veteran offensive line is going to be able to not stop, but at least somewhat slow down Sack Avenue and give Frank Harris some time to work. And he's an awfully good quarterback who can do some good things. So I think if we see both teams just trading touchdowns and it coming down to a turnover here or there, I think that's where this game scares me, even as a Houston fan who feels pretty good about my roster heading into the season.
Yeah, I would co-sign everything Dustin said about the secondary. The thing that gives me the most potential heartburn about this is, two new cornerbacks after you lost a couple NFL drafted guys going against an extremely experienced passing attack with Frank Harris and UTSA's top 3 receivers, an offense that, like I think you said, Jared, on our pod, isn't going to be shy about throwing the ball around, and that's kind of a torture test. Guys like who Dustin just mentioned, like Alex Hogan and Art Green, this isn't going to be their first time on the field. These guys have played a fair amount over their career prior to this, but will undoubtedly be asked to fill bigger roles than they have previously. And being asked to fill that bigger role against an opponent that is not going to be shy about attacking, I think your defense's one big weakness. Yeah, I think that's the scary part of your U of H fan. I really do think if UTSA with those 4 returning offensive line guys, and maybe if you get, I would say just you get like C+, B- play out of whoever the new left tackle is, I think you're really sweating if you're U of H fan. If UTSA can establish the run, not even saying they're going to run all over the Cougars, but if UTSA can get 3 to 5 yards whenever they want it, I would say this is going to be a very, very, very difficult one for the Cougars. I do think this is going to be a game that's going to be played in the 40s and 30s, regardless of who wins this. It's going to be it's kind of a game that shows how defenses in week 1 are maybe just a little bit more behind the offense. So I expect to be high scoring, expect it to really hinge on that, UTSA offensive line versus UH defensive line, at UTSA pass attack versus Cougar secondary. I think those two matchups in some way are going to make however this game goes.
Well, I have 2 off-topic questions for you guys, but I'm gonna give Adrian an opportunity to ask another, actual game about a question about the game this week if he has any.
Fine.
No, we can move into off-topic. I'm ready.
Sure. So the first one, it's still football related at least. UTSA is kind of backfilling Houston's spot in the AAC, picking up that P6 banner that you guys left behind. What piece of advice would you give the UTSA fan base as they head into the new conference? It could be anything, right? Anything, just something fun.
Whenever you have your first game in Dallas, can I light swear? Is light swearing good on y'all's show?
Yeah.
I want y'all to get after their asses. I want you to make SMU Stadium like 70-75% UTSA fans, because I've seen it. I've seen what y'all do in San Marcos every time there's a UTSA Texas State game there. I feel like you could do something similar whenever the SMU UTSA series comes up in the schedule. I'm assuming they haven't released anything. I'm assuming we don't know whenever the 2020, but of course that's going to be a game that they're going to make sure is on the annual schedule. It's what I'm very excited about. There aren't a lot of future AAC games where I'm like, ooh, that's a matchup I would absolutely go out of my way to watch if I'm near a TV and not watching a Cougar game of some kind. UTSA versus SMU, I think, is going to be an absolutely fantastic future rivalry, and I'm looking forward to the meeting of the minds that is SMU's fan base realizing what UTSA traveling fans do. I'm
there goes the neighborhood.
Very excited for that one.
How's that moving in, bro?
It was like whenever we went to Waco, bro.
We're about to turn Highland Park into the patio.
You should have seen the faces in the Baylor HEB parking lot, dude. Man.
Can't imagine. Actually, I can't imagine. That is my one piece. That is my one piece of advice.
That's great.
because they like to talk. Like I was gonna say, they talk about we're this big outlaw program and we're gonna really dominate the AAC. Once the 3 departing schools leave, but that kind of ignores the fact that they have like 9,000 fans total, and that for their biggest game in ages, you saw this, Jared, against U of H, they brought like 500 fans for like their biggest game in many years. Sorry, Dustin.
I was going to say that's probably a better piece of advice than mine. I was also going to single out one single team that you're going to hate for no reason. It was actually Memphis, and I remember never really thinking Memphis football could ever be relevant enough to be something that I hated. But yeah, they're just obnoxious. Like we just never get through a Memphis game without one of their players doing some dirty play that just pisses off the entire stadium, or just someone doing something that you're just like, God, I just hate these guys. I don't know what it is. I went from so unbelievably apathetic to Memphis football to just like loathing their existence overnight. And I'm not sure how it happened, other than I guess because they finally got a little bit good at football. But yeah, I don't know. You're just gonna hate Memphis football, and you're not gonna be quite sure why, other than it just seems like as everything about them is often wrong. And so, I think part of it too. If you guys, I know you guys are at least somewhat Twitter degenerates like we are. Like there are no Memphis fans on Twitter. It's the biggest mystery.
It's not just us doing a bit. Yeah.
Like and like that would, I think, make it. You hate the person that you don't know. You fear what you don't know. I guess maybe if they had a couple of cool fans on Twitter, they wouldn't be so obnoxious. But yeah, Memphis is the worst. I hate them, and they are right up there neck and neck with SMU for just schools that I'm so glad to be leaving behind in the American
Dude,
Athletes.
I love some pure hate for another program, and that's coming out genuine right now, and I love it. Memphis is going to have a bone to pick with us when we get there next year, so it'll be interesting to see if some of those elbows get thrown.
I was going to say, I've already gotten to a fight with Memphis podcasters, so I'm off to a roaring start.
Oh yeah!
Wow.
I'm already persona non grata.
Serious beef. Yeah, I remember that.
That's funny that you mentioned that, Dustin. I was listening to an interview with Mike Oresco recently, and they were asking him about developing rivalries in this new AAC. And he's like, we've had a lot of like intense rivalry that has sprouted up out of nowhere, right? So I think Houston, Memphis is a great example, and I could totally see UTSA, stepping into that. We already have, bragging rights over them for having the walk-off win last year, and so I think that'll be fun. I think that intention to play out well. But my last off-topic question. Oh, what's up, Adrian?
Oh, man, you just reminded me of something that we haven't freaking brought up, man. How salty are you guys still after the inaugural game at TD-UTSA Stadium? I mean, is there amongst the fans? Because I know none of the players and personnel were there at the time, right? But the fan base, is there still like a sour feeling towards UTSA from that game?
I'd be lying if I said like people didn't remember it, but I don't know. And I think some people are maybe a little saltier than others, but personally, I think the majority of times, the way I would describe it is like remembering something embarrassing you did in high school, and you're like, that was dumb. But also that was long enough ago that you're just kind of like, okay, whatever. We were a different program back then, and we've come a long way since then, and that kind of thing. And it's just, and there have been enough highs and since then, going to the Peach Bowl, beating a Heisman Trophy winner and Lamar Jackson, and beating OU to open the season at NRG Stadium. In between,
getting into the Big 12,
going to the Big 12 invite, that was pretty cool too, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's easy to kind of just go, okay, yeah, that was embarrassing. I'm not glad that it happened. I don't love it when it gets brought back up again. And it's kind of obnoxious.
Sure.
As long as TD-UCU Stadium stands, like that will always have been the first game. So you'll have that over us until the end of time, no matter how many, how many points, even if we win by a lot on Saturday, whatever the case may be.
I wonder if Dano is like throwing up some clips this week. He's got to be, right?
I don't doubt
I would be.
I would just add that the one thing it did do, I have nothing personal against this guy because I think he played an enormous part in Tom Herman having the talent to hit the ground running like he did. But it was obviously like everything Dustin said, I completely co-sign. Not pleasant. It's never gonna not be the case. No matter what happens in the interim years and decades, the first game at the stadium is always going to be that specific game. But I really do think that game made it abundantly clear to the power brokers at U of H that they could not go any further with Tony Levine as head coach. And I think obviously the aftermath of Tom Herman being here didn't go perfectly. I think he emphatically did not set this program up for long-term success. And I think this coach had to dig had to dig a fair amount out of a lot of short-termism that was done by Tom Herman and subsequently Major Applewhite. But I think if nothing else, it had the good outcome of making it unbelievably clear that Tony Levine just was not the guy to, and they gave him until the end of the season. But I'm sure on that night, a lot of the people at U of H were the decision makers were like, yeah, this isn't happening. We need to get a little more ambitious. We liked this guy. We gave him a chance to try to keep some continuity from the Kevin Sumlin years, and it's just not working. So that was a good outcome. But like Dustin said, never won't be difficult, never won't be embarrassing, and never won't unfortunately be the first game of of something that, like the stadium, something U of H had been just striving to have for years. We're just happy to have like an on-campus stadium in Robertson, even though it was an S-hole where Dustin and I have just like countless great memories, but was not a serious Division I stadium. You finally have an on-campus serious Division I stadium for the first time in 7 years. Open up with a loss to UTSA, and that will never not be a little bit embarrassing. But I don't know. I think, like Dustin said, enough's happened in the interim that it's not something keeping me up at night, but it will always be something UTSA fans have over this program. I think couldn't come on here and honestly say otherwise.
I think a takeaway we can all agree on: should have scheduled Rice instead. Just saying. Last question for you guys. Hopefully it's a quick one because there's only one right answer. What's the greatest Houston rap song of all time?
Still tipping. Most City Don's good. Most City Don's good. Most City Don was the only one that I thought about a half a second for, but I'm gonna say Still Tipping.
I'll accept Still Tipping.
I'll accept both answers, right? But I think the right answer is Want to Be a Baller.
I don't think I'll accept Most City Dawn. It's Want to Be a Baller. Want to Be a Baller is the greatest Houston rap song of all time. But
that's a really good one.
Still Tipping has a 1A argument by all means. You could even say the most popular. You say more people across the US of A could probably spit a Still Tipping verse and they could have Want to Be a Baller verse.
Yeah,
absolutely. Everyone knows Mike Jones.
But if someone says Most City Dawn, you know they're from Houston. Right?
Yes, absolutely.
Which is important.
100%.
All right, guys. Well, thanks for humoring me on that one. I've always wanted to ask podcast guests that, and y'all were by far the most qualified. So thank you for your service. Well, once again, thanks to Sam and Dustin and the Scott and Holman podcast. I hope all of our listeners will go and check out your interview with us this week, as well as the rest of your podcast. Like I said at the top of the interview, you guys do amazing work, and we're always trying to emulate you guys as best as we can. So thanks again for coming on. And if you guys want to shout out your social media or anything like that, please feel free.
Yeah, thanks again for having us on. Really enjoyed chatting with you guys. This was a lot of fun. Like I said, it's wherever you get podcasts, the Scott and Holman podcast. Make sure you put that silly Cougar pun in, PAWD podcast. And we are Twitter degenerates. So give us a follow on Twitter at SHPAWD. CASTSH podcast with the pun in there. We will hope to see you all on Twitter because we spend way too much time on there, and excited to be in San Antonio for this game on Saturday for sure.
Yeah, Dustin, I hope we see you at the tailgate too. Please stop
come
by
to see, man.
All right, well, thanks again, guys, and we'll see you all next time.
Thanks for having us, fellas.